Thomas Jefferson lives. He's Ron Paul. If Jefferson lived today, he would rail about the Federal Reserve. He wouldn't like that. He'd be appalled by our ongoing wars, our nonstop wars. Jefferson said, the less you use power, the greater it becomes. Compared to Ron Paul said, you sacrifice liberty for security, you lose both. So this sentiment is still in the American bloodstream. It's out there. I've worked at 7 presidential campaigns. I've co-authored books with presidents. I've interviewed 6 or 7 of the presidents and first ladies and 19 of their children. And I served in the White House for 1 president and advisor to 2 presidents. And I have never served anyone more incorruptible than Ron Paul. I sleep better at night because he's a principled person who believes in the Constitution. And that offends sometimes some groups, this group or the other group, but it's a wonderful document, and there's nothing extreme, there's nothing dangerous, there's nothing wrong with the U.S. Constitution. There are just a lot of people that love Ron Paul, and they see him as almost an impossible figure. People after Watergate wanted honesty, and now they want someone who's incorruptible. There's corruption with Wall Street, there's corruption with K Street and the lobbyists, and here comes this country doctor from Texas, won't take a bribe, won't touch the lobbyist money, votes against any pay raises, won't take his congressional pension, gives back much of his money allocated as a congressman. You can't believe a figure like this. He's incorruptible, and that's what people are looking for right now, someone who's not gaming the system.
He said
we see Mitt Romney's #1 contributor is Goldman Sachs. #1 contributor to Barack Obama, Goldman Sachs. People want to change. They want someone who's not touched by the corruption of K Street or Wall Street or Congress. And here's this kindly old doctor gentleman from Texas who is like a clean boat in a sea of garbage, and people love him. This is a secret that is hidden in plain view. You can go back over the polls for the last 6 months, and what you'll find, whether it's Rasmussen or NBC Marist or Washington Post ABC, what you'll find is that the perception is he's unelectable. It'll be 8% of registered Republican voters who think he can win. In those same polls, they pit him against Obama. He does better than all of the GOP candidates except Romney, and is in a statistical margin of error with Romney. And the CBS poll that came out on Monday showed that he beats everybody with independents, including Obama and Romney.
You know,
they saw Winston Churchill. He was a pariah in his own party, to both parties. He often voted alone in Parliament, and he was ridiculed by the press, but he was right. And if your viewers Google September 10th, 2003, Ron Paul, they will see him before the House Financial Services Committee predicting the housing bubble, describing the morality of millions of homeowners losing the value of their homes, of the mortgage lending crisis. All of this was seen in advance. And if George Bush knew the housing bubble was coming, and if Obama knew that his stimulus program wasn't going to produce any jobs at all, why didn't he tell us? And if he didn't know, why is he in power? And why not turn to somebody who seems to know? So that's how these sort of things do happen historically. In 1964, how they railed about Barry Goldwater, and they called him dangerous because if he's elected president, he'll trigger a nuclear war. Now they're saying Ron Paul is dangerous because if he's elected president, he won't. Well, the young people don't mind having peace. We think we'll do good in South Carolina. We're second among born-again Christians, and we've got a strong following, as you know, among the military. And we're changing the party. This is a story the news media has missed. I saw the change of the party under Goldwater. I saw the change in '88 when evangelicals swept into the party. Something like this is going on now. Our supporters are coming in and changing the Republican Party from the county level up, and the news media is missing this.
Ron Paul sponsored 620 bills. He passed 1, and it was fairly insignificant. Doesn't Congressman Paul have a history of failure when it comes to getting his proposals passed?
You know, the greatest contribution he's made, he doesn't get a lot of credit for it because he doesn't put his name on everything, was pulling back the curtain on the Federal Reserve. 4 years ago, Greg, 74% of this country didn't even know what the Federal Reserve is. Today, 78% of the nation wants it audited. Obama, Romney would audit a waitress to make sure she pays taxes on her tip money but won't audit the Federal Reserve. But thanks to Ron Paul, we got a partial audit. It showed in 2008 that $16 trillion, the national debt was $14 trillion, $16 trillion was loaned out in interest-free money to major banks in this country. The people, we've always had corruption in Washington, but people are really angry because the corruption has reached a level that they're losing the value of their homes, the value of their IRAs,
Doug,
and Ron Paul's the only person with the guts to take this on.
Let me squeeze.
A lot of what he says and believes is misrepresented. He believes strongly in the Constitution, and that if we want to go to war, let's go to war. He voted in favor of going after Osama bin Laden, and he supported Israel in 1981
he opposed
almost
the assassination,
alone.
though.
He opposed the way the assassination was conducted. He felt it should have been done immediately when we went
Didn't
in.
he say
that our
America's
purpose
to
should not
blame?
be. Ron Paul is incorruptible. He's honest. He's a good example of our foreign policy now. Is just in the last few weeks we have troops on the ground, boots on the ground in Australia for purposes of defending us against China.
Sure.
So we borrow money from China to have American troops in Australia to defend us against China. He believes we need a little more sanity.
That does
to
seem
our
to
foreign
resonate with a
policy.
lot of folks.
There's nothing dangerous about the U.S. Constitution. If blocking the Straits of Hormuz or some other action by Iran was deemed as an act of war, or we decided we needed to react, as a president, he would take it to the U.S. Constitution, to the U.S. Congress. We would decide, declare war, we'd win it, and then we'd get out. That's what he believes. And the U.S. Constitution is not dangerous.
Right.
We represent a cause, and our people will support us financially, and thus the campaign go on, because whether we come in first or second or third, the cause remains. And we will be able to sustain this marathon campaign. And we think the news media is misreading it because of the proportionality of the delegates, that this is going to last a lot longer than it did last cycle. But the reason we see it as just a race with Mitt Romney and Ron Paul is because many of these other Republican candidates that we talk so much about aren't even on the ballot in Virginia. Some of them aren't on the ballot in Illinois, the fifth largest state in the union. John Huntsman's not even on the ballot in Arizona. There are 24 presidential candidates on the ballot in Arizona. So some of these gentlemen are not really running for president.
So what you're arguing is, no matter what happens with the finish in South Carolina, Ron Paul will continue to the state of Florida at the end of January.
And he'll continue beyond that. And we think we'll do very well in South Carolina because, as you know, among military families, the military, they give more money to Ron Paul, the active military, than all the other GOP candidates combined. And there's a reason for that. They know that Ron Paul is not going to send them into a war to die for some Pentagon contractor. He'll send them to war when it has to defend America.
Doug, we thank you. We're going to check in,
Thanks,
okay?
Bill.
See how you feel in about a week, all right?
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Martha.
They know that Ron Paul is not going to send them into a war to die for some Pentagon contractor. He'll send them to war when it has to defend America.
Doug, we thank you. We're going to check in, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
See how you feel in about a week, all right?
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Martha.
They know that Ron Paul is not going to send them into a war to die for some Pentagon contractor. He'll send them to war when it has to defend America.
Doug, we thank you. We're going to check in, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
See how you feel in about a week, all right?
Okay, thank you, Bill.